This is our Boulder County Head Start training on the Office of Head Start's eligibility final rule. This is a requirement of all programs effective February of 2015 that we not only train our policy council, but others as well on what allows a family to be eligible for Head Start. As well as have clear policies and procedures by which we enroll families. This will be a brief overview required for all Policy Council members, and following this overview, then we will have an opportunity for questions and answers and conversation in the next Policy Council meeting. So first, there are some requirements that I would like to share with you that per the Head Start Act and the Head Start Program Performance Standards, sometimes known as HSPPS, programs are required to do a number of things. We must create written and consistently applied eligibility determination processes. And as a member of Head Start, as a member of our policy council, you would have already seen those eligibility and recruitment processes and discussed those. We must also edit those processes annually, or at least review them along with you as a policy council, and then get your vote of approval on those documents. We must follow all eligibility requirements as noted in both the Act and or the performance standards. We must train both Policy Council and the Boulder County Commissioners on all requirements within 180 days of a new group. We must train relevant staff within 90 days of their hiring in the program. And we must also have clear policies by which staff are disciplined if they manipulate any paperwork or commit any infractions related to enrollment. There is a term in Head Start called categorically eligible. That means a child is eligible whether or not they can show income qualification. These are very clearly laid out in both the Act and the performance standards, and they relate to homeless children, foster children, and any family who receives certain public assistance benefits. Homeless children is defined by the McKinney-Vento Act, and you can see here the list of ways that a child may be determined as homeless. In addition, or of note here, is that we need not have legal documentation that someone is homeless. A family may state they are homeless, and we can help them write a written statement that we hold on to declaring that their family is homeless per this definition. You'll see this first one is doubling up. What that really means is that two families are living within the same home without enough determined space for two families. So if it's a really large home and family members can have reasonable bedrooms and those sorts of things, it's not considered doubling up. But if you have two families living in a small home or a trailer or an apartment where there are not ample bedrooms for children and adults, that would be considered doubling up. So you can see there are many other living situations that may also allow a child to be determined to be eligible via homeless. We must priority place children who are in the foster care system, and any children whose families receive Social Security disability benefits or TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. Once a child qualifies for our program, they are eligible for 2 years no matter how much their situation changes, so long as they are not old enough to go to kindergarten. So what that means is if a child is 3 years old and they qualify, they are automatically qualified when they are 4 years old the year before they go to kindergarten. Here are the eligibility requirements across the different types of programs. We only run a Head Start program, which means that a child must be at least 3 years old by the date that they can go to kindergarten, which is the last day of September. And they must not already be older than required school age. And those dates and ages are set by the Boulder Valley school system, and we are required to use those to work in alignment with them. You'll see here, this is our Head Start eligibility verification form. It is based off of a sample form that the Office of Head Start has recommended. And you can see here that our staff fill out this form and they indicate on here how they know the child is eligible. And one way is here called over income. We will talk about that in just a moment. And then the forms that they used to verify and document that, as well as certification signatures that everything is true and documented appropriately from the staff person. This stays in the child's enrollment form along with any forms used to verify. Office of Head Start says we must keep a copy of those forms on site so that the Office of Head Start may review it at any time if they deem necessary. So this is the over income allowances. As I mentioned, some families are allowed to be quote unquote over income. So we of course have a priority for families living at or below the 100% of the federal poverty level. That is determined at the federal level outside of our control locally. It is at this time in 2020, it is under $26,000 a year for a family of four approximately. 35% of our enrollment slots may go to over income families. So in our program, that's 46 children. Up to 25% of total enrollment can be between 101 and 130% above the federal poverty level, and 10% of our enrollment may go to families above that 130% of the federal poverty level, so long as we can demonstrate that this family has other needs. So sometimes that might be children with disabilities, families who have recently been homeless or recently have been living in poverty, and or other risk factors that the program determines. We must demonstrate as a program that all families living at or below 100% of the federal poverty level are served first before we serve those over income families. Additionally, at this point in time for the 1920 school year, Boulder County Head Start has room for up to 17 additional families who are deemed over income by the Head Start definition, who are not served by Head Start, but they are served with CCAP and or CPP funding only. So this allows a little more space for more children and families who need it, but do not qualify for Head Start itself. The last thing we're going to go over are the requirements of Boulder County Head Start staff related to eligibility. We must have an in-person interview with all families unless there's a demonstrated need by the family for another way of determining eligibility. For example, if a parent is bedridden due to illness, injury, or other reason, we may do a phone call interview instead. The vast majority of our families, I would say 99% or more, have an in-person interview with a family community professional to help determine eligibility for our program. We must verify all information whenever possible. That means if a family gives us information about their qualifications and they receive other types of social services, we may verify with those social service agencies that a family is receiving those benefits. On the other side of that, if we get permission from a family to get documentation from another social service agency, we must go back and look at that with a family to ensure it's correct. The last piece of important information here is to know that in a child's enrollment file, we must keep all records that we collected to show that the family was eligible. That could be tax forms or pay stubs. Sometimes we even get letters from employers or bosses that say how much a parent makes for income to help determine their eligibility. So this concludes our online piece of training around the eligibility final rule. We will have an opportunity in the next Policy Council meeting for you to ask questions, make comments, and or recommendations to the program based on what you have heard and learned today. Thank you so much for taking the time to enjoy this overview.